My name is Cassandra Miller, 34 years old, and once the proud rising star at Boston Capital Partners. Now I am just a mother sitting beside a hospital bed watching my 8-year-old son Ethan fight for his life against a disease I cannot pronounce. I thought my family would be my rock during this nightmare. Instead, they saw opportunity. The notification on my phone showed zero where $500,000 should be. I never imagined betrayal could come from those who share my blood. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss my stories. Trust me, you will want to see how this ends. Before our world crumbled, I had what most would consider a charmed life. I had worked my way up at one of Boston's most prestigious investment firms, breaking glass ceilings and earning recognition for my financial strategies. My colleagues respected me, my clients trusted me, and my future seemed limitless. I met Michael during my second year at the firm. He was a client with a quick smile and genuine interest in more than just my investment recommendations. Our relationship bloomed quickly, and within 18 months, we were married in a small ceremony on Cape Cod. Michael was everything I never knew. I needed supportive, kind, and absolutely devoted to building our life together. When I became pregnant with Ethan, he transformed our spare bedroom into a nursery himself, painting clouds on the ceiling that glowed in the dark with tiny embedded lights. Our son will always have stars to wish on, he told me, his hands splattered with blue paint. We settled into a comfortable life in a Boston suburb in a colonial home with a fenced backyard and excellent schools. Michael continued his work as an architectural engineer, while I returned to the investment firm after 6 months of maternity leave. We had balance, we had joy, and most importantly, we had each other. Until we didn't. Ethan was 5 when Michael took a client out on his small sailboat, a routine courtesy that he had extended dozens of times before. A sudden squall, a capsized vessel, and my husband was gone. The client survived. Michael did not. Just like that, our perfect world imploded. The life insurance policy and Michael's careful financial planning meant Ethan and I would be secure financially, but nothing could fill the gaping hole his absence left in our lives. Ethan would ask for weeks when Daddy was coming home, unable to grasp the permanence of death at his age. I would find myself reaching for Michael's hand in the middle of the night, the cold emptiness beside me, a cruel reminder every time. During those dark days, my extended family stepped in. Michael's younger brother Patrick and his wife Heather brought meals and helped with Ethan. My sister Jillian and her husband Greg took Ethan for weekends to give me space to grieve. My parents Martha and William even moved in for a month to help establish new routines. I was grateful, but our relationships had always been complicated. Patrick had always lived in Michael's shadow, starting and failing at numerous ventures, while Michael succeeded effortlessly. His latest project, a fusion restaurant in downtown Boston, was already showing signs of financial trouble, despite being open less than a year. Heather constantly compared their modest apartment to our home, her comments thinly veiled with resentment. My sister Jillian and I had a different kind of tension. Growing up, she was the favorite, the pretty one, the social butterfly, the one who made our parents proud by following their expectations. I was the odd one who preferred books to parties and challenged family traditions. Jillian married Greg right out of college, a man my parents adored, despite his inability to hold a job for more than 2 years. They lived beyond their means, their house filled with luxury items they could not afford, their credit cards perpetually maxed out. My parents never quite forgave me for choosing finance over teaching, which they considered a more appropriate career for a woman. They had retired with minimal savings, having counted on their home equity to sustain them, a plan that collapsed during the housing market crash. They never directly asked for financial help, but their comments about family taking care of family grew more frequent after Michael's death. Despite these undercurrents, we maintained the facade of a close-knit family. Holiday gatherings, birthday celebrations, occasional Sunday dinners, we went through the motions while ignoring the simmering tensions. For Ethan's sake, I tolerated the subtle digs about being the rich sister and deflected requests for small loans that everyone knew would never be repaid. Then came the day that changed everything again. I was in a quarterly review meeting when my phone exploded with calls from Ethan's school. He had collapsed during recess, unresponsive and burning with fever. By the time I reached the hospital, he was surrounded by a team of doctors speaking in urgent, hushed tones about immune responses and systemic inflammation. The diagnosis, when it finally came, was devastating: a rare autoimmune disorder that was attacking Ethan's major organs. The local hospital quickly determined they were not equipped to handle his case and arranged transfer to Boston Children's Hospital, where a specialist in pediatric immunology took over. "We need to act aggressively, Doctor," Winters explained, her kind eyes contrasting with her grim expression. "This condition can progress rapidly, and Ethan's already showing signs of multiple organ involvement." Just like that, our lives narrowed to the dimensions of a hospital room. I took immediate family leave from work, setting up a makeshift office in the corner of Ethan's room for the few critical tasks I could not delegate. Days blurred into nights as I slept on a narrow recliner beside his bed, waking at every beep of the monitors or movement from the medical staff. Once again, my family rallied around us. Patrick and Heather brought home cooked meals to replace the hospital cafeteria food. Jillian took over managing my mail and house maintenance. My parents sat with Ethan so I could shower or make necessary phone calls. In those early days, their support seemed genuine and unconditional. "Family is all that matters in a crisis," my mother said, patting my hand as we watched Ethan sleep, his small body connected to more tubes and wires than I could count. "We will get through this together." I believed her. I needed to believe her. I had no idea that behind their concerned expressions, wheels were already turning, plans forming that would add betrayal to my already unbearable burden. Days in the pediatric ICU followed a punishing rhythm. I woke at 5:30 each morning when the night nurse came in for Ethan's vital checks. By 6, the phlebotomist arrived to draw blood for the day's tests. 7 brought the attending physician and a parade of residents, their hushed discussions at the foot of Ethan's bed filled with medical terminology I struggled to understand despite my frantic research. My own routine became mechanical brushing teeth in the small bathroom, attached to Ethan's room, changing clothes in the same cramped space, and combing my hair while watching my son's chest rise and fall with each assisted breath. I subsisted on coffee from the parents' lounge, and whatever food visitors brought, often forgetting to eat, until a kindly nurse reminded me. "You cannot help him if you collapse yourself," Nurse Maya would say, placing a sandwich firmly in my hands and watching until I took a bite. 2 weeks into our hospital stay, Dr. Winters requested a meeting in the small consultation room down the hall. Never a good sign. I followed her woodenly, my body moving while my mind raced ahead to worst-case scenarios. "Cassandra, Ethan's condition is not responding to the standard protocols, as we'd hoped," she said, her voice gentle but direct. "His kidney function is declining, and we're seeing increased inflammation in his lungs and heart." I gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. "What are our options?" "There's an experimental treatment protocol developed at Johns Hopkins. It combines targeted immunotherapy with stem cell transplantation. The results in similar cases have been promising. Approximately 70% of patients show significant improvement." Hope flickered briefly until she continued. "However, I need to be upfront with you. This treatment is still in clinical trials. While we can apply for compassionate use approval, insurance companies classify it as experimental and won't cover the costs." "How much?" The question felt absurd. How do you put a price on your child's life? Dr. Winters hesitated. "The full treatment course, including the harvesting and processing of stem cells, hospitalization, and follow-up care, runs approximately $430,000. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Even with my savings and investments, that figure was staggering. But looking through the consultation room window at Ethan's small form in the ICU bed beyond, I knew there was no real choice to make. "How quickly can we start?" That evening, while Ethan slept under the effects of his pain medication, I made calls to my financial advisor and bank. I would need to liquidate most of my investment portfolio and tap into the emergency fund I had established after Michael's death. It would deplete resources I had carefully built for Ethan's future. But what good was a college fund if he didn't survive to use it? My family arrived during this financial scramble, bringing dinner from my favorite Italian restaurant. Gathered around the small table in the corner of Ethan's room, I explained the situation and my decision to pursue the experimental treatment. $400,000, Patrick whistled low. That's insane for something not guaranteed to work. It's Ethan's best chance, I replied simply. Of course you have to do it, Jillian said, reaching for my hand. And you don't have to handle everything alone. Let us help more. I can pay your household bills, she offered. Just give me access to your online banking and I will make sure everything stays current while you focus on Ethan. And I will check on your house, bring in mail, make sure everything's secure, Patrick added. The last thing you need is to worry about burst pipes or break-ins. My parents exchanged glances before my father spoke. We can take shifts sitting with Ethan. You need to keep your strength up, which means actual sleep in an actual bed occasionally. Their offers touched me deeply. Despite our complicated history, they were stepping up when it mattered most. I gave Jillian limited access to my online banking, enough to pay the utilities and mortgage. I gave Patrick a key to my house and the security code. I thanked my parents and arranged a schedule for their hospital visits. Then I turned my complete attention back to Ethan, whose condition continued to deteriorate despite the medical team's best efforts. His face grew more swollen from the steroids, his energy diminished, to the point where even opening his eyes seemed to exhaust him. I read to him for hours, played his favorite music, and kept up one-sided conversations about school friends and future plans, desperate to keep him connected to the world beyond his hospital bed. As the days passed, I began to notice subtle changes in my family's behavior. Their visits grew shorter and less frequent. Text messages went unanswered for hours, sometimes days. When they did come, they seemed distracted, often stepping out to take phone calls. I attributed it to compassion fatigue, the emotional toll of seeing Ethan so ill wearing down their initial energy. One afternoon, Maya mentioned seeing Patrick in the hospital parking lot. Your brother-in-law was having quite the heated argument with someone on the phone, she remarked, while checking Ethan's IV. Everything okay with him? He seemed really worked up. I made a mental note to ask him about it, but forgot in the chaos that followed. Ethan's oxygen levels dropped suddenly, requiring urgent intervention and a frightening hour of watching specialists work to stabilize him. When he finally stabilized, Dr. Winters approached with cautious optimism. We've been accepted into the clinical trial program, she said. They can start the protocol next week, but they need the financial commitment finalized immediately. The specialized medications have to be ordered, and the cell harvesting team scheduled. I will transfer the initial payment tomorrow, I promised, relief washing through me. This was it, the chance we had been waiting for. That night, as Ethan slept peacefully for the first time in days, thanks to adjusted medication, I allowed myself a moment of hope. I stepped into the hallway to call my financial advisor to arrange the transfer, only to find my cell signal spotty. Moving toward the family waiting area for better reception, I passed the small hospital chapel, where a young couple clung to each other, sobbing quietly. Their grief was a stark reminder of what I was fighting against, what I refused to accept as Ethan's fate. I would find the money, I would get him the treatment, I would not lose my son. I had no idea that at that very moment, the safety net I had so carefully constructed was being systematically dismantled by the people I had trusted most. The first indication came during Ethan's preliminary procedure for the clinical trial. My phone vibrated repeatedly in my pocket with banking alerts, but I silenced it without looking. Dr. Winters was explaining the complex process of T-cell harvesting that would begin the next day, and nothing seemed more important than understanding every detail of what my son would experience. The initial extraction takes approximately 4 hours, she explained, as a nurse prepped Ethan's arm for yet another IV. He'll be sedated, but not fully unconscious. There's minimal discomfort, mainly from having to remain still for so long. Ethan looked up at me, fear evident despite his attempt at bravery. Will you stay the whole time, Mom? Every second, I promised, squeezing his hand. I am not going anywhere. It wasn't until nearly midnight, after Ethan had finally fallen asleep following a difficult evening of fever and nausea, that I remembered the banking notifications. Curled in the recliner beside his bed, I opened my banking app, expecting to see confirmation of my scheduled transfers to the hospital. Instead, my screen showed a series of alerts for unusual account activity. My checking account balance read just under $2,000, when it should have contained over $50,000 for upcoming hospital payments. My savings account showed $812 down from nearly $150,000. My hands shook so badly I could barely navigate to my investment account. The portfolio I had painstakingly built over 15 years, the one I had been in the process of liquidating for Ethan's treatment, showed multiple recent withdrawals. Where there should have been over $300,000, the balance now read just under $20,000. In total, approximately $500,000 had vanished. I must have made a sound, a gasp, or cry because Nurse Maya appeared at my side, her face concerned. "Cassandra, are you okay?" I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. The room seemed to spin around me as I handed her my phone, pointing mutely at the screen. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Is this what I think it is?" I nodded, struggling to find my voice. Someone has taken almost everything. The money for Ethan's treatment, it's gone. Maya's training kicked in immediately. She guided me to the parents' lounge where I could make calls without disturbing. Ethan promised to watch him closely and brought me water with steady, capable hands. "I will check on you in 15 minutes, she said firmly. "Try to stay calm while you sort this out. Panic won't help, Ethan." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of frantic calls. The bank's emergency fraud department confirmed my worst fears. Multiple large transfers had been made from my accounts over the previous 5 days. The transfers went to accounts belonging to Patrick, Heather, Jillian, Greg, and my parents. "These transactions were authorized using your credentials," the fraud investigator explained. "They originated from your home IP address and were made on devices that have accessed your accounts before." "That's impossible," I insisted. "I have been at the hospital for weeks. I haven't been home." "Did you give anyone access to your accounts recently? Or access to your home?" The realization hit me like a physical blow. My family, the people I had trusted with access to my home, my online banking, my mail, they hadn't been helping. They had been systematically robbing me while my son fought for his life. I ended the call with the fraud department after filing preliminary reports and placing freezes on all remaining funds. With shaking hands, I opened social media, searching for evidence of what I already knew in my heart. It didn't take long to find. Patrick had posted photos of a brand new Mercedes SUV just 2 days earlier, captioned, "Level up, life's too short to not enjoy the ride." Heather's Instagram showed shopping bags from Gucci and Louis Vuitton, with the caption, "Treating myself after a stressful month." My parents had announced a surprise early anniversary trip to Europe, a 3-week luxury tour they could never have afforded on their retirement income. And Jillian's latest post showed her modeling an enormous diamond tennis bracelet captioned, "When your husband knows exactly what you deserve." They hadn't even waited a week before flaunting what they had stolen from Ethan's chance at life. The bathroom floor was cold against my knees as I collapsed, violent sobs racking my body. I had trusted them. I had believed in family above all else. And while my son lay fighting for his life just rooms away, they had betrayed us in the most fundamental way possible. I don't know how long I stayed there, curled on the floor of the hospital bathroom. Eventually, Maya found me when I didn't return to Ethan's room. "Oh, honey," she said softly, helping me to my feet. "Whatever it is, we will figure it out." "They took it," I whispered. "My family took Ethan's treatment money. All of it." Maya's expression shifted from compassion to something harder, more determined. "Then we will get it back. But first you need to pull yourself together for that little boy. He needs his mom strong right now." She was right. I splashed cold water on my face, took 3 deep breaths, and returned to Ethan's bedside. He was still sleeping peacefully, unaware that his chances had just diminished dramatically. Looking at his pale face, the dark circles under his eyes, I made a silent promise I would fix this. Whatever it took. That night, as Ethan's monitors beeped steadily in the background, I made 2 important calls. The first was to the hospital's financial services department, explaining the situation and begging for time to resolve it before Ethan's place in the clinical trial was given to another child. The second was to the police, formally reporting the theft. As dawn broke, bringing another day of medical rounds and procedures, I received an unexpected piece of good news. Ethan's latest blood work showed slight improvement, the first positive change in weeks. His inflammatory markers are down 8%, doctor, Winters said, genuine smile breaking through her professional demeanor. It's not dramatic, but it's definitely movement in the right direction. It was the sign I needed. Ethan was fighting, and so would I. With new determination, I formulated a plan to confront the people who had betrayed us and recover what they had stolen. 3 days after discovering the theft, I got my opportunity. Maya, who had become my fiercest advocate in the hospital, offered to stay with Ethan for a few hours. Go do what you need to do, she said, understanding in her eyes. Ethan and I will have a movie marathon. He will be fine for 3 hours. I kissed my son's forehead, promised to return soon, and walked out of the hospital for the first time in nearly a month. The afternoon sunlight felt strange on my skin after so many weeks under fluorescent lighting. I drove directly to Jillian's suburban home, knowing from years of family tradition that everyone would be gathered there for Sunday dinner. Sure enough, the driveway held a collection of vehicles, including Patrick's new Mercedes, my parents' car, and 2 I didn't recognize, probably new purchases with my stolen money. Instead of announcing my arrival, I approached quietly, moving around to the back of the house where large patio doors opened onto a deck. Through the glass, I could see them all gathered in Jillian's expansive kitchen. Shopping bags from high-end stores littered the countertops. A bottle of Dom Perignon chilled in an ice bucket. They were laughing glasses raised in what appeared to be a toast. I moved closer, staying hidden behind a large potted plant. Through the partially open patio door, I could hear Patrick's voice clearly. I put a deposit on that villa in Bali today, he announced proudly. 3 weeks in paradise, just as soon as things settle down. Speaking of settling, Greg replied, did you see the real estate listings I sent? Waterfront properties in Malibu? We could be neighbors. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, my father cautioned, though he was smiling broadly. We should space out the major purchases. Be smart. Oh, please, Jillian laughed, the diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured dismissively. Cassandra is so caught up with Ethan she hasn't even noticed the transfers. By the time she does, we will be long gone. Besides, what's she going to do? Leave her precious son to chase us down? Their casual cruelty froze me in place for a moment. Then something inside me hardened into resolve. I walked around to the front door and entered without knocking. The house fell silent as I appeared in the kitchen doorway. 5 pairs of eyes widened in shock, quickly masked by manufactured concern. Cassandra, my mother exclaimed, setting down her champagne flute. What are you doing here? Is Ethan okay? Don't, I said quietly. Don't pretend you care about Ethan. Patrick's stepped forward expression carefully arranged into sympathy. Sis, you look exhausted. Should you be away from the hospital? Why don't I get you some water? Where is my money? I interrupted, my voice steadier than I felt. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Glances were exchanged. My father cleared his throat. What money, dear? I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. $500,000, transferred out of my accounts over the past week. Transferred directly to all of you. There must be some mistake, Jillian said quickly. I was only supposed to pay your bills, remember? Maybe the bank. Stop lying, I cut her off. I have already spoken with the bank. I have seen the transfer records. And clearly I gestured to the shopping bags, the champagne, Patrick's watch, Jillian's bracelet. You have been enjoying spending it. Patrick's expression changed, then sympathy melting into something harder, almost smug. He exchanged looks with the others before straightening his shoulders. Fine. Yes, we took the money. And you know what? We needed it more than you. The blunt admission stunned me into momentary silence. What did you just say? You heard me, Patrick continued, gaining confidence from the nodding heads around him. You have always had everything handed to you. The perfect job, the perfect husband, the perfect house. Meanwhile, the rest of us struggle. My restaurant is failing. Jillian and Greg can barely make their mortgage payments. Mom and Dad's retirement fund is practically empty. So you stole from my critically ill child. My voice rose despite my efforts to remain calm. We borrowed what the family needed, my mother interjected. You have so much, Cassandra. And let's be realistic, spending all that money on experimental treatments. The doctors have made it clear Ethan's condition is very serious. Would Michael want you to waste everything on false hope? I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. How dare you invoke Michael's name to justify stealing from his son? Look, Greg said, stepping forward. We are just accelerating the inevitable. That money would have been our inheritance eventually anyway. Consider it in advance. Jillian nodded. Exactly. You have always flaunted your success, made us feel small with your charity. Well, now we have taken what you owe us, after years of showing off. I looked from face to face, these people who shared my blood, who had sat beside me at Michael's funeral, who had held Ethan as a baby, and saw nothing but entitlement and justification. I want every penny returned by tomorrow morning, I said evenly. Every single cent. Or I will ensure you all face the maximum consequences possible. Patrick actually laughed. Right. And how exactly will you do that? You can barely keep yourself together. You haven't slept in weeks. You're emotionally devastated. By the time you figure out how to fight us, that money will be long gone. The police, I began. We'll consider it a family matter, Heather interrupted, speaking for the first time. You gave Jillian access to your accounts. Patrick had permission to be in your house. It's your word against ours, and there are 5 of us. Face it, Cassandra, my father said, not unkindly. You have bigger concerns right now. Focus on saying goodbye to your son instead of the money. It's where your energy belongs. The casual cruelty of his words hit me like a physical blow. I took a step back, struggling to maintain my composure. This is your one chance, I said, my voice low and dangerous, even to my own ears. Return the money or face the consequences. What consequences? Patrick scoffed. Go back to the hospital, Cassandra. There's nothing you can do. I turned without another word and walked out, their mocking laughter following me to the car. Once inside, I allowed myself exactly 30 seconds of tears before wiping my eyes and starting the engine. They thought I was beaten. They thought grief and exhaustion had left me powerless. They had no idea what I was capable of to save my son. I returned to the hospital with new purpose, the shock of betrayal transforming into cold, strategic determination. Ethan was awake when I arrived, watching a movie with Maya just as she had promised. Mom, we are watching Jurassic Park. Nurse Maya says the dinosaurs are not scientifically accurate, but they are still cool. I kissed his forehead, noticing it felt cooler than before. Super cool. Thanks for keeping him company, Maya. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Everything okay? It will be, I replied, with newfound confidence. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I began mobilizing resources I had previously been too overwhelmed to consider. My first call was to Jessica Harrington, my college roommate who now worked as a financial crimes prosecutor for the district attorney's office. They did what Jessica's outrage crackled through the phone when I explained the situation. While your son is in the ICU, that's not just theft, Cass, that's elder abuse, given Ethan's vulnerability wire fraud conspiracy, multiple felonies. They think I am too broken to fight back, I said. And they believe they have covered their tracks by having legitimate access to my accounts and home. They've made a serious miscalculation, Jessica replied grimly. Give me 24 hours to make some calls. Document everything, transfers, social media posts showing purchases, text messages, everything. While Ethan slept, I meticulously compiled evidence. I took screenshots of bank transfers, photographed my family's social media posts, and recorded my conversation with the bank fraud department. I discovered that Patrick had attempted to transfer the remaining $20,000 from my investment account, but had been blocked by the freeze I'd placed. The next morning, Detective Marcus Ryan from the Financial Crimes Unit arrived at the hospital. Tall, with salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing, he reviewed my evidence with professional detachment. Family financial crimes are unfortunately common, he explained, but this case is particularly egregious given the circumstances. The good news is the electronic trail is clear, and the amounts are significant enough to qualify for grand larceny charges. What do you need from me? I asked. We'll need formal statements and eventually testimony if this goes to trial. But first, let's focus on freezing what assets remain before they disappear overseas or get converted to cash. Detective Ryan left with copies of my documentation and a promise to begin the legal process immediately. As he departed, my phone pinged with a text from my cousin Amanda, who had been at Jillian's house after I left. I feel terrible about what they're doing, her message read. You should know they've been planning this for months. I saw their group texts where they discussed waiting until you were at your most vulnerable. I forwarded everything to your email. I'm so sorry, Cassandra. The forwarded messages confirmed my worst suspicions. The theft hadn't been opportunistic, it had been calculated, planned while they pretended to support me and Ethan. They had discussed how much to take, how to spend it quickly enough that recovery would be difficult, and even laughed about my anticipated reaction. She'll be too busy holding vigil to notice until it's too late, Patrick had written. By then, we'll be living our best lives somewhere she can't reach us. Armed with this additional evidence, I contacted the hospital's legal aid department. They connected me with Eleanor Walsh, an attorney specializing in emergency court orders. With the evidence you have, and the urgency of your son's medical situation, we can request an emergency hearing for asset freezing, Eleanor explained. We'll argue that the funds were explicitly intended for life-saving medical treatment for a minor, which adds significant weight. By that afternoon, Eleanor had secured a court order freezing all accounts belonging to my family members. A separate order prevented them from selling or transferring any recently purchased assets. As these legal wheels turned, I received unexpected support from Dr. Winters and the hospital administration. Learning of our situation, they agreed to proceed with Ethan's enrollment in the clinical trial with a delayed payment plan. We will not let financial crime victimize this child twice, the hospital administrator assured me. Begin the treatment protocol and we'll work out the payment details as your legal situation resolves. For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. And remarkably, Ethan seemed to be responding. His latest blood tests showed continued improvement in his inflammatory markers. It's modest but meaningful progress, Dr. Winters said during evening rounds. His body is fighting back. Just like his mom, Maya added with an approving nod. That night, I received a call from Detective Ryan with news that energized my resolve further. We've frozen the accounts, he confirmed. We've recovered approximately 60% of the total amount. Some has already been spent, but we've also placed liens on the new vehicles and luxury items. More importantly, we have enough for arrest warrants. We can proceed whenever you're ready. I want to confront them one more time, I said, a plan forming. Give them one last chance to return everything voluntarily before arrests happen. That's not standard procedure, Ryan cautioned. But given the circumstances, I understand your position. If you choose to confront them, we can coordinate with you, be nearby for safety, and to execute the warrants regardless of the outcome. Tomorrow evening, I decided. They will be gathered at Jillian's house again. I can be there at 7. After finalizing the details with Detective Ryan, I sat beside Ethan's bed watching his peaceful sleep. For the first time since discovering the theft, I felt something other than despair. My son was fighting for his life with everything he had. I would fight for his future with equal determination. The next morning brought another positive development. Ethan woke with an appetite for the first time in weeks. "Can I have ice cream?" he asked, a hint of his old mischievous smile returning. "Chocolate with rainbow sprinkles?" I laughed through tears of relief. "If Dr. Winters says yes, you can have all the ice cream you want." As I helped him with his approved breakfast of vanilla pudding, Dr. Winters had compromised on the ice cream request. I received confirmation that everything was in place for the evening confrontation. Court orders had been served to banks and financial institutions. Arrest warrants had been signed. A team would be in position at Jillian's house by 6:30. I spent the day alternating between attending to Ethan's care and preparing myself mentally for the confrontation ahead. Maya agreed to stay with Ethan again, having become invested in our situation. "Go get them," she said fiercely as I prepared to leave. "That little boy deserves justice along with his treatment." I kissed Ethan goodbye, promising to bring back a surprise. As I drove to Jillian's house, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The time for tears and shock had passed. Now there would be consequences. I arrived at Jillian's house at exactly 7 o'clock, parking directly behind Patrick's new Mercedes. Through the windows, I could see my family gathered in the living room, drinks in hand, apparently celebrating their successful heist. New shopping bags were piled on the coffee table. Travel documents lay spread across the dining table. This time, I knocked on the front door. Greg answered, surprise flickering across his face before he composed himself. "Well, look who's here again. Glutton for punishment." He stepped aside with mocking courtesy, allowing me to enter. The others turned as I walked into the living room, their expressions ranging from annoyance to smug amusement. "Back for more?" Patrick asked, holding up his wrist to display an obviously new and expensive watch. "As you can see, we have been putting the funds to good use." "I see that," I replied calmly. "I also see the airline tickets to Bali. First class." "Only way to fly," Heather confirmed with a smirk. "We leave next week." My mother approached, attempting to appear conciliatory. "Cassandra, I hope you have had time to think about what we discussed. Family has to stick together in hard times. We are just redistributing resources where they are needed." "That is one way to describe theft and fraud," I replied. "Oh, please," Jillian rolled her eyes. "Dramatic as always. You gave me access to your accounts. You can hardly call it theft when you handed over the keys." I looked around at their faces, not a trace of remorse or shame among them. Just entitlement and the absolute certainty that they would face no consequences for what they had done. "I am here to give you one last opportunity," I said evenly. "Return the money. All of it. Right now." Patrick laughed outright, crossing the room to pour himself another drink. "Or, what? We have been through this. There is nothing you can do." "The money is gone," my father added with a dismissive wave. "Spent or moved where you cannot reach it. Accept reality and move on." "You should be at the hospital anyway," my mother added, focusing on Ethan during whatever time he has left. The casual cruelty of her words hung in the air. I felt a flash of white-hot anger before controlling it. Anger wouldn't help Ethan. Strategy would. "This is your absolute last chance," I said quietly. "Return the money now or face the consequences." "What consequences?" Patrick stepped toward me, his posture suddenly threatening. "There are no consequences. You are powerless here. Go back to your dying kid and leave us alone." I met his gaze steadily. "I warned you. You have no idea what is coming." Without breaking eye contact, I pulled out my phone and sent a single text message, "Now." For 3 seconds, nothing happened. The room remained frozen in tableau. Patrick's menacing stance, Jillian's smirk, my parents' dismissive expressions, Greg and Heather watching from the sidelines. Then came the sound, a tremendous crash, as the front door burst open with such force that pictures fell from the walls. Uniformed police officers poured into the house, followed by Detective Ryan and 4 agents from the Financial Crimes Unit. "Police, everyone stay where you are," the commanding voice filled the room as officers moved with practiced efficiency to secure the space. The transformation in my family's faces was instantaneous. The color drained from Patrick's face as he stumbled backward. Jillian's smug smile collapsed into open-mouthed shock. My mother clutched my father's arm as he swayed slightly. "What is happening?" Heather's voice rose to a panicked pitch. "What is this?" Detective Ryan stepped forward, badge extended. "I am Detective Marcus Ryan, Boston PD Financial Crimes Unit. We have warrants for the arrest of Patrick Miller, Heather Miller, Jillian Cooper, Gregory Cooper, Martha Winters, and William Winters on charges of grand theft wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse related to the exploitation of a vulnerable dependent minor." "This is ridiculous," Patrick sputtered. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Ryan replied coldly. "We have documented evidence of systematic theft of approximately $500,000 from accounts belonging to Cassandra Miller funds, specifically designated for life-saving medical treatment for a minor child." As Ryan spoke, officers began reading rights to each family member. Another team moved through the house, documenting and tagging items purchased with stolen funds. "You set us up," Jillian hissed at me, her face contorted with rage as an officer secured handcuffs around her wrists. "You planned this." "No," I replied quietly. "You set yourselves up when you decided to steal from a dying child. I just made sure there would be consequences." Patrick made a sudden break for the back door, apparently thinking he could escape through the yard. He made it 3 steps before being tackled by an officer waiting just outside. "The house is surrounded, sir," the officer informed him as he was handcuffed. "There is nowhere to go." My mother began to sob dramatically, claiming a misunderstanding. "We are family. This is just a disagreement about shared resources." "Bank records indicate otherwise," Mrs. Winters Detective Ryan replied without sympathy. "The systematic draining of accounts over multiple days suggests careful planning, not a misunderstanding." "She gave us access," my father protested, as he was led toward the door. "That constitutes permission." "Access to pay bills, not to transfer hundreds of thousands of dollars to personal accounts," Ryan countered. "The text messages planning this theft over several months make your intentions quite clear." I stood still in the center of the chaos, watching as the people who had betrayed me faced the consequences of their actions. There was no satisfaction in seeing them led away in handcuffs, only a hollow relief that this chapter was ending and Ethan's treatment could proceed. Before leaving, I walked through the house one last time. On the mantel stood a photograph of Ethan from his last birthday, smiling widely with cake on his face. I took it from its frame, tucked it into my pocket, and walked out without looking back at the family members being placed in police vehicles. Detective Ryan met me at my car. "We will need a formal statement tomorrow, but it can be done at the hospital. The department understands your priorities." "Thank you," I said simply. "Will you be able to recover more of the funds?" "We have already frozen approximately $300,000 in their accounts. The vehicles and major purchases will be seized and liquidated. With insurance coverage for fraud, you should recover 80 to 90% of what was taken." It would be enough. Enough for Ethan's treatment, enough for a fresh start when he recovered. Because he would recover, I would accept no other outcome. As I drove back to the hospital, the weight that had been crushing me for days began to lift. My family had betrayed me in the worst possible way, but they had failed in their ultimate goal. They had not taken Ethan's chance at life. In their greed and entitlement, they had lost everything: their freedom, their reputation, their future. And in fighting for my son, I had found strength I never knew I possessed. 4 months later, I stood in the doorway of our new home, watching Ethan chase a butterfly across the freshly sodded lawn. His cheeks were pink with exertion and health, his laughter carrying on the spring breeze. It seemed impossible that this was the same child who had lain so still in a hospital bed, connected to so many machines. The experimental treatment had worked better than anyone dared hope. 3 weeks after the first infusion, his inflammatory markers dropped dramatically. By the second month, his major organs showed significant recovery. After 3 months, Dr. Winters used the word remission for the first time, though cautiously. "He will need ongoing monitoring," she warned, "and there may be long-term effects we cannot yet predict. But Ethan has responded exceptionally well. He is a fighter." Just like his mother Maya had added with a wink. Our new beginning extended beyond Ethan's health. After the arrests, I could not bear to return to our old house with its memories of betrayal and the knowledge that those I had trusted had violated that space. Instead, I sold it remotely and purchased a smaller but brighter home in a different suburb, close enough for Ethan to eventually return to his school, but far enough that we would not constantly encounter painful reminders. The legal proceedings against my family moved with surprising speed, likely due to Jessica's influence and the straightforward nature of the evidence. Patrick and Greg accepted plea deals, rather than face trial, receiving 5-year sentences for their roles in the theft. Jillian, Heather, and my parents received shorter sentences but significant probation periods and restitution requirements. Through asset seizure, bank fraud protection, and insurance claims, we recovered just over $400,000, enough to cover the remainder of Ethan's treatment and establish a new emergency fund. I returned to work part-time, my firm having held my position throughout the crisis. More important than the financial recovery was the emotional one. During Ethan's extended hospital stay, I had formed connections with other parents facing similar battles. These relationships evolved into a support network that proved invaluable during our transition home. Jessica formally became Ethan's godmother, a role she embraced with characteristic intensity, appearing regularly with educational games and books. Detective Ryan checked in periodically, first professionally and then personally, becoming an unexpected friend. Maya visited on her days off, bringing baked goods and hospital gossip that made Ethan giggle. Doctor Winters continued to oversee his care, her clinical detachment softening into genuine affection for her determined young patient. These people, who had no obligation to us beyond professional duty, had stepped in where blood relations had failed. They had become our chosen family, bound by something stronger than genetics. Explaining the situation to Ethan presented its own challenges. As he recovered and became more aware, he inevitably asked questions about the absent grandparents, aunt and uncle who had once been fixtures in his life. "Where did everyone go, Mom?" he asked one evening as I tucked him into his new bed, surrounded by glow-in-the-dark stars I had carefully placed on his ceiling in homage to Michael's nursery creation. I sat beside him, choosing my words with care. Sometimes honey people make bad choices that mean they have to go away for a while to learn important lessons. Like when I took Danny's action figure without asking and had to sit in timeout. Something like that, but much more serious. They took something very important that was meant to help you get better. His brow furrowed as he processed this. That was not very nice. No, it was not. But you know what? It helped us find out who our real family is. Like Jessica and Detective Marcus and Nurse Maya. Exactly like them. Family is not always about who you are related to. Sometimes it is about who shows up when you need them most. He nodded sagely, accepting this with the remarkable adaptability of children. Can we invite them for my birthday party? Absolutely. As Ethan healed, so did I. The betrayal left scars, but they faded with time and perspective. I learned to accept help without fear, to recognize genuine support, and to value chosen connections over obligatory ones. 2 weeks after moving into our new home, we hosted a small housewarming gathering. Jessica arrived with books for Ethan's new bedroom shelves. Detective Ryan Marcus, now that we were friends, brought a security system he insisted on installing himself. Maya contributed homemade curtains for the kitchen. Dr. Winters appeared with a medical kit for minor emergencies only, please, and a bottle of excellent wine. Watching them interact with Ethan, each in their own way, contributing to his recovery and happiness, I felt a profound gratitude. The family I had lost could not compare to the one we had built. On Ethan's first day back at school, he presented me with a drawing he had made during art period, titled Our Family. It showed him and me in the center, surrounded by Jessica, Marcus, Maya, and Dr. Winters, all holding hands in front of our new house. "Do you like it, Mom?" he asked, searching my face anxiously. "I love it," I replied truthfully. "It is perfect." That evening, after Ethan was asleep, I sat on our new porch swing reflecting on our journey. The betrayal had nearly broken me, had nearly cost my son his life. But in fighting back, in refusing to surrender to despair, I had discovered reservoirs of strength I never knew I possessed. I had learned that family is not defined by blood, but by love, loyalty, and showing up in the hardest moments. I had learned that forgiveness is possible not for those who betrayed us, but for myself, for the guilt I initially felt at not protecting Ethan better. I had learned that rebuilding after devastation creates something stronger, more authentic than what existed before. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes the deepest wounds lead to the most profound healing if we have the courage to face them and move forward. If you have ever experienced betrayal from those who should have protected you, know that you are not alone. Have you ever had to rebuild trust after someone close to you broke it? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that family is about who shows up, not just who shows up in your family tree. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes our greatest strength emerges from our most painful challenges.